You're listening to Recovery Survey, the podcast that shatters stigmas around different types of addictions and takes a deep dive into spiritual principles.
I find a lot of wisdom that comes from your show. You interview different people, and I know you just do an overall good job, and you're a blessing to recovery in general. So I want to make that very clear for the record that I love the movement that you have, what you're doing. You're saving lives, and you're educating and informing people. And I think that's important.
I want to thank my friends at Recovery Survey for giving me the opportunity to talk to them about my recovery journey.
Thank you for having me on the new podcast that you just developed, which is unbelievable, Recovery Survey Podcast. I really appreciate what you're doing and been doing and continue doing.
My guest today is named Merrit Hartblay. He is a licensed chemical dependency counselor in New York, and he is also the author of a new book that just came out a couple weeks ago titled Lost Innocence, My Journey from Addiction to Recovery. Welcome to the show, Merrit.
Hey guys, my name is Merrit Hartblay. I live in New York City on the North Shore of Long Island. I've been a alcohol counselor and a social worker and a therapist for the past 12 years. I primarily work in a substance abuse outpatient facility here in Long Island, and I also do private therapy work with clients who are dealing with all kinds of issues: drug addiction, substance abuse, trauma, depression, anxiety, the works. Love what I'm doing. Actually, grateful to be on this interview. My first book actually just came out yesterday on Amazon. We can talk a bit more about that.
I would love to hear more about your book.
Yeah, so it took about 5 years to finish. The name of the book is called Lost Innocence, My Journey from Addiction to Recovery. You can find it on Amazon.com. It came up yesterday. It's been a real process pulling it together, but it pretty much, I'll actually have 12 years of sobriety on the 24th of September. The book pretty much starts out from the day that I got sober and then backtracks my whole life up until that point. It's pretty much, a really detailed story. And the reason we wanted to release it at this time was, actually released it yesterday because it was my birthday, which is kind of a cool birthday present. Beyond that, because of what's happened with COVID, so many people now are struggling with substance abuse and mental health issues. So I thought the book was really timely because it talks about some dark stuff, but primarily it really talks about that there's hope for anybody struggling with drug addiction and substance abuse, that if they really want to get sober, they can do it. And it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, but there's so many things you can do in life. One of my favorite sayings, which I mentioned in the book, is people that have sobriety, how many people are given a chance to live 2 lives in one lifetime? So I think it's pretty amazing.
Absolutely, man. It's definitely a gift. I don't want to give away too much of the book since it sounds like it's about your life, but would you mind maybe hitting a couple high points for us?
Sure. I mean, I grew up in Jamaica, Queens, here in New York City. Both of my parents were big drinkers, so they're friends. They all had a circle of friends who drank a lot. So me and my younger sister pretty much, we had to kind of live through that. At a young age, I really saw how my parents really used alcohol to kind of self-medicate. I think, as I got, and I swore that I would never drink. I swore that I would never drink because I saw what it did. But, I think that I realize now when I look back when I was writing the book that people that have addiction and substance problems really wind up having addictive behavior long before you pick up a drink or a drug. So as I look back now, I realize that I started having addictive behaviors long before I started drinking and drugging. And, what's interesting is that I didn't have my first drink really until the end of my junior year in college. A lot of people start out sooner. I went to school on a track scholarship. So I ran track and cross country for 4 years, and I had an amazing mentor who is still my friend today. So I didn't start out until late. But when I got out of college and I came back to New York City, it was kind of like the best way I can describe it is being comfortably numb for 30 years. I kind of wound up, now as I look back now, I wound up living most of my life based on other people's expectations from me, living my life the way other people wanted me to live it. And I think that, I'm working with a lot of my patients and clients now, it's the same story. People kind of like the person that they wanted to be, they couldn't be. So they kind of put that person on the shelf to be the person everybody else wanted them to be, which is a horrible way to live. And so I pretty much drank and drugged for like 30 years, and then finally, I got to a point where I kind of gave up. And by the grace of God, I found my way into to AA and to sobriety. So, and then things really changed. My son was captain of his high school football team, and he came to me one day and he goes, "Dad, a bunch of the guys on the team aren't taking alcohol and drugs seriously. Can you come and talk to them?" And I had coached Little League baseball in our town for about 15 years, and I said, Trevor, a lot of these people are going to know what your dad went through. And he said, "I don't care if we can help them." So I started going into the local high school. After talking to the principal and the health teachers, I went into the high school once a week and started talking to the students about alcohol and drugs and life. So that's when my whole career changed. I walked away from corporate America and I decided to go back to school. I wanted to become a drug counselor. And I did that. I went back to school, became a drug counselor, started interning, got my KSAC, was then working at a few outpatient facilities in Long Island. And then about 2 years into that, I said, someday I'm going to want to do private practice and I have to do more. So it's funny, man. I went back to Binghamton University, my alma mater, when I graduated with my BA undergrad, years ago. Went back to school to get my master's in social work. So I went back in 2013. It was a 3.5-year program, 2 nights a week in school, and was working full time as a drug counselor during the day. And it's kind of taken me to where I am today. So I'm grateful for my sobriety. And I guess it was kind of something that came over me, was that I knew there was a bigger purpose for me to be able to really go out and really help other people find peace of mind. And that's kind of what led me to starting to write the book almost 5 years ago.
That's beautiful, man. I think for me too, that's one of the things that I've found is, since I put down the drugs and alcohol, I feel like I now have a purpose in life and that there is more to life than just trying to escape from those feelings and try to people please, and actually start to get to know myself on a personal level. I feel like I didn't know who I was, and I was just lost and confused. And,
right.
I feel like today I found hope, and now, one of my biggest things in life is trying to help those people that are still struggling and be able to not only tell them that there's another way to live, but show them by example that it's possible and that you can have a meaningful life. Because one of the things that I had in my mind when I first considered not using was, man, my life's going to be boring. What am I going to do?
Right.
Because I'd never done that before, and I didn't realize that there was so much potential and there were so many things that I would find and discover about myself, and new passions and hobbies.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And the other thing is that, I made a couple of moves in my life. I thought, well, if I move away, I moved from New York to Houston, Texas. I had a big opportunity to work there, and I moved away. But I didn't realize that wherever you go, you take yourself with you, right? So I thought if I moved away, everything would be better. Everything would be different. But it wasn't. It just became the same old thing again. But just like you, I think that, what I learned is that when I was drinking and drugging, I was a very selfish person. I would really walk over anybody to get what I needed to get from me. But when I got sober and I started working on my sobriety, I realized that the greatest gift for me was to help you, right? Was to do something for somebody else, to become like selfless, where the greatest gift is doing something for somebody and nobody knows you did it, right? When I did stuff in the past, I wanted everybody to know that I did it. I wanted like my name up in Times Square. Now it's like, I don't really need anybody to know. I get enough self-fulfillment from just helping somebody, period,
That's one of the things that I've found, at least for me personally, one of the best ways that I can get out of that self-centered and self-seeking mindset is to be of service to other people and to do things for other people. That's been one of the biggest keys. Not only helps my recovery because I'm getting out of myself, but it's also helping other people. And I think that's a huge key to this whole thing.
It really is. I mean, I think, a lot of my clients now in my outpatient, I do an intensive outpatient program 3 days a week. And a lot of them talk about the fact that they're grateful for their sobriety, especially now during this whole pandemic situation, because I have found that people that really can hold on to their sobriety realize they can get through anything. They can get through good times without having to have them be better times. They can get through bad times without having to be worse times. One of my statements that I put out to my group, I think it was about a week ago, is that my definition of If you can find gratitude in the middle of any kind of a storm, that's sobriety. So it's really passing on the message. And so that's what kind of led me to this place in my life now. And I'm finding that there's so many more things. It's like so many people that I know, like they reach a certain point in their life where they figure that, well, this is the best that it's going to get. And they kind of accept that. I don't come from that school now. Living a life of sobriety, it's like for me, there's so many things that I can do. When people say to me, you're going back to grad school at 54, it's like, so what? What does that mean? It doesn't matter. There's no age limit. You can do whatever you want. The only thing that can get in the way of you accomplishing anything in your life is you, right? That was, for me, was in the past. I couldn't get out of my own way. That was the biggest problem. But now, if we talk about sobriety and talking about, God, whatever you believe in, whatever higher power you believe in that kind of guides you, when you kind of surrender and kind of give up and say, you know what, I'm done running the show, life gets so much better. I'm sure you would agree.
That was one of the things that I struggled with a lot in the beginning, was recognizing my powerlessness and recognizing my need for a higher power, and then turning my will and my life over and not running the show anymore, because I had done it for so long. I was my own god,
right?
And pretty terrible at it. But I didn't want to give up that control, and I think a lot of that stems from fear, because I didn't know what was going to happen if I did something different.
Right. Yeah, it's true. So I think it's great what you're doing. Since I finished the book, I have an amazing publisher, and she helped me with a lot of the marketing. So, I did a ton of marketing on Instagram and Twitter, and I found people like yourself and other people doing podcasts, and I realized there's a whole world out there of people like you, people like me, that really are trying to spread this message. But it's not, people need to understand that it's not about religion, because people say, oh my God, you're in AA, it must be some kind of cult or something. It's not about that. It's about spirituality. But I go into middle schools and high schools and colleges, and I do a lot of lecturing, and I talk about, having to find peace of mind, how to get rid of stress and anxiety. I find that I incorporate a lot of the 12-step work just into life, because I tell people, I think that it should not be called AA. It should be called People's Anonymous, because wouldn't you agree that if everybody in the world had a place to go once a week to dump their problems, the world would be a better place, right? People in sobriety get a chance to do that as many times a day that they want, or during a week that they want. So I incorporate a lot of my 12-step work into when I'm working with students and professionals, because it's all about living a good life. It's all about taking a deep breath and realizing for the first time that you've been living a lie. People have been living a lie for 20, 30 years. They were living their life, like I said earlier, the way they wanted people to live their lives. But you would agree, I'm sure, right, that living your life based on other people's expectations for you is only going to lead to disaster.
Absolutely.
So that's really what came about to the book. And I'm actually starting to work on a second book, which will probably be in about 6 months' time. I really got into the field of mental illness, because I think there's a big stigma in this country about mental illness. And you'll find that most people that struggle with substance abuse also have a mental health issue. I spent about 1.5 years. I worked with an agency here in New York that strictly dealt with severely mentally ill patients. And I learned an awful lot. This next book is all going to be about, the people behind the diagnosis. Because, I've met a lot of people who, let's say when they were 13 or 14 years old, they were struggling with life. The parents didn't know what to do. They take them to a psychiatrist. They get diagnosed with, I don't know, ADHD, anxiety, bipolar, something, and they get put on medications. And then I met people that happened to them at 13, and now they're 30, and they've been on medications for 20 years, and they're like numb. They don't, so there's more than just being diagnosed. So I've learned an awful lot about that. And I think that the country's getting better now, but for a long time, there's been a huge stigma about mental illness.
And I think that stigma is slowly going away, but there's definitely still a stigma around talking about mental health.
Yeah.
I think for me, too, this is just my personal belief, but I think it's harder for men to talk about it, because we're supposed to be, like the strong, like the pillar foundation of, our families or at work or whatever. And I think it's a lot harder for men to admit that they're having issues and go and talk to a professional, man. Like it's difficult to get to that point and to actually do something about it.
I know. But I think it's slowly starting to change, because, a lot of my patients or clients, especially men, I think they're reaching a point where they're just like broken down. They realize that they've been living a lie for so long. And it's like, oh my God, what the hell's going on? So I think it's slowly starting to change. It's just a matter of, in the case of, let's say, men, they need to be in groups with other men so they can see that they're not unique, that they're not alone, that there's support out there, and then people can finally throw up their hands. I think this pandemic thing has really, what I've seen is, before this happened, one of my biggest issues was that I do a lot of family work. And I realized that the family unit had pretty much broken down. Families just didn't communicate with each other more. I mean, I was out to dinner one night in a restaurant by myself, and I was watching a family of four at this table, mother and father and two young kids. Nobody was talking to each other. They're all on their cell phones or their tablets or their game pads. And I'm thinking, I wanted to go up to this family and say, excuse me, like, why are you even in this restaurant? You might as well just be home ordering out takeout. So I think the pandemic has caused a lot of families to have to learn to communicate with each other better, to spend more family time with each other. I have my clients every day do a gratitude list, because I think if you take some time each day to think about the things you're grateful for, you'll think about all the things you took for granted, right? I think things are changing. I mean, just like you, I think that we have to keep fighting this fight every day and let people know that there's a voice for them. There's a place, there's an arena where they can go to feel safe and talk. The other big issue that I have is, and I'm not judging, but one of my biggest issues is with doctors, because a lot of doctors that have been in practice for a long time aren't well trained in addiction medicine. So if you're an alcoholic and you don't tell anybody about it, and then you go to your doctor because you're stressed out and he puts you on Xanax or something, he doesn't realize that you're drinking 2 bottles a day. I mean, that's dangerous stuff. And then you have primary care doctors prescribing all kinds of psychotropic medications, which is really a problem. So again, I don't want to judge, but there are a lot of doctors that I know out there that are the biggest drug dealers around. Doctors don't make their money from dead patients or well patients. Doctors make their money from chronically ill patients. So in a lot of ways, they keep them coming back, So I always tell my clients and patients, you have to be in control of your treatment, not the doctor. If you don't feel comfortable, if you don't think that the medication's right, get a second opinion. Seek out another professional. If society had its way, we'd all be comfortably numb. All of society would be comfortably numb.
You brought up several points there. One of the ones that I think was really key that you touched on was talking about just our addiction to entertainment and technology. Right. I can see both sides. Like, I can see benefits of it, like especially right now with the pandemic. Like, my home group is online right now because the facility that we rent is closed. So I think there's some good things from it, being able to stay in contact with other people in the program and check on them and be able to see them face to face. Well, not face to face, but webcam to webcam. But I also see that negative that you're talking about, where everybody's just glued to their device and we don't have those real connections. I was having a conversation with my wife the other night, and I was like, we get home from work and we're tired and we sit in front of the TV, and I was like, what if one night a week we just don't turn the TV on? Like, we play a board game or we do something where we're interacting with each other, because, we're together, but we're not interacting, we're just in the same space. And I think that's an important part of any relationship, is that intimacy and that communication. And a lot of that is not happening just because we're so focused on our screen, on our social media, on whatever's going on the news, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're familiar with the term codependency. There's a really good book called Codependent No More, and I find that a lot of couples that I work with, they're just beginning, they never really knew what codependency was. They get so caught up in themselves that they wind up meeting, they wind up getting married. Now it's 20 years later, and they look at each other like, who is this person? A lot of the work that I do with my clients is on developing healthier communications. I tell all of my clients that are married or in relationships, at the end of the day, try to take 10 or 15 minutes, sit down and just talk. Just talk about how your day went. And I said, but you have to also realize there's a big difference between hearing and listening. A lot of times people are listening, but are they really hearing what you're saying? They just want you to shut up so they can talk. So a lot of the work that I do really is on healthy communications, because most of the relationship work that I do, most of the relationships aren't really healthy relationships. It's really based on a lot of codependency. People have settled for less, they've kind of given up, and that's no way, the excitement, the honeymoon period is over, and now it's kind of like they just fall into this rut, but you're like sacrificing so much, right? You don't want that to happen. So I think it's great that, you said that to your wife.
I mean, there's a lot of negatives as far as the pandemic. I've heard that, you know, the suicide rates have gone up, and depression and anxiety. And I mean, it makes sense if you're stuck in your house and you don't have a job, and, you know, there's all these things that are just piling on top of each other. It can be a really difficult situation for anybody.
Exactly. It's true. I try to get a lot of my clients to develop good daily routines, you know, to make sure they dedicate, you know, get up in the morning, dedicate some time to meditation or music or something, you know, go on the computer, do some work, whatever it is, go out and exercise. You have to find a way to build this daily routine, because if you don't, you, like you said, you get stuck in this rut. And, you know, actually, I've done a couple of good things, though. It's students. You know, I do a lot of work with college students. I'm up in Binghamton like twice a semester lecturing. And right now, when this whole pandemic thing hit, I do a weekly Zoom session with about 4 students that are a couple of graduate students, a couple of undergrad students. And we just talk about life. You know, just talk about the stressors and the pressures of life, and how to kind of not, you know, one of the things I tell my patients every day is, don't watch the news. Don't watch the news, because, you know, people get caught up in chaos. If you watch something bad that happens on the news in the morning, and if you don't get away from that, it's going to sit with you for the whole day. You know, I say, don't do that, you know, because it can get crazy. So I try to have them focus on other things, you know, go take walks, do something, take the cobwebs off that bicycle in the garage and start riding it, you know, do some good stuff. You know, I think what's really important is a lot of people that I work with, they wind up working in certain careers that they never really wanted to be doing in the first place. And they did it because I had a guy who was a cop, and he became a policeman because his father was a policeman and his grandfather was a policeman, you know, so he wound up, you know, even though he wanted to be a lawyer, he wound up going to become a cop. And I had a woman in my group who always wanted to be a nurse, but when she graduated from high school, her father goes, you're not going to be a nurse. You're going to be a mom and a mother and a wife. I think the biggest thing that I try to impress on people is, no matter where you are in your life right now, take a deep breath and ask yourself, are you living the life that you want to live? I ask them the miracle question. If you woke up tomorrow morning and you got up and you took a shower and you had breakfast, and everything in your world looked perfect the way you wanted it to be, and you were going to that perfect job, what would it look like? There was a great lady that I did a lot of work with. She passed away a couple years ago, Louise Hay. She was amazing. And one of the books she wrote, You Can Heal Your Life. It's all about, if you change the way you think, you can change your life. So I've had people say, you know, ask yourself this question. When you go to work in the morning, are you miserable? Can you wait? Can't stand it? You can't wait to get home? Are you doing something in your life that you hate doing, but you're doing it because that's what you're supposed to be doing? One of the questions that I would ask people every day is to really take a deep breath and ask yourself, when you get up in the morning, are you happy? If you couldn't fall asleep at night because you're wrestling with stuff in your head that you're not really looking forward to the next day, then you really got to ask yourself some serious questions like, why are you doing that? You know, one of the things we learn in sobriety is that you never, ever again have to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. If you have faith in yourself and faith in a higher power or whatever you believe in that can get you through this, why would you want to go to a job every day that you don't like? Why would you do things during the course of your day that you don't like? You know who Carlos Santana is? A couple of years ago, I went to a concert here in Long Island, and he played, and he's been in recovery for a while now. And he said at the end of the concert, happiness is a choice, not a right. So think about it. You know, people say, oh, happiness, want to be happy. That's like ridiculous. I said, no, why should that be so ridiculous? You need to get up each day and say, I'm going to be happy today. And if something gets in your way, you have to stop and ask yourself, what's going on right now? Because the goal of life should be to be happy, not to be miserable and to go through running through the mill every day because that's what is expected of you. So that, if I could leave you with anything and the audience with anything, it would be, try to take the word expectations out of your life. Because if you have an expectation for something to happen and it doesn't, what happens? You get a resentment, you get angry. I mean, my definition of resentment is me taking poison waiting for you to die. Like you could have said something to me a year ago that pissed me off, and you moved away, and I haven't seen you in 2-3 years, but I'm still pissed off about that. That's crazy, right? Think about how many people carry resentments with them for a lifetime. You know, that's why I say, you know, people that aren't familiar with AA or the 12 steps, is that I teach in a school here in New York for people to become drug counselors. And whether they're in recovery or not, I have them all do a 4th step. I say, if you want to be a good counselor, If you want to be a good psychologist or a therapist or a social worker and you want to go out into the world and help people, you can't help your patients if you're still stuck in the mud with something. Like I said to this woman, if you want to work with women that have been sexually abused and that have sexual trauma, how can you work with them if you haven't resolved sexual trauma you exhibited when you were a kid, right? So I think that the biggest part of this is like, clearing your life out, having no expectations. If you don't have an expectation, then you don't have any resentments, right? Then you don't get angry. If something doesn't happen, okay, well, it'll happen another time. So that's really if I could leave you with something, I think that's the biggest thing. My goal is to help people find peace of mind. And right now, so many people are self-medicating. The only reason that they kept liquor stores open and they were deemed as essentials because, you can die from alcohol withdrawal. So they'd rather have people drink during the pandemic because there weren't enough detoxes open. But now that people are getting back to somewhat normalcy, a lot of people are realizing, oh my God, I've been drinking to numb this whole thing, but now I got to go back to work, but I can't stop drinking. It's a problem.
In closing, would you like to tell the audience if you have a website or social media or anything, and maybe remind them again the name of the book and where they can find that?
Yeah, we're actually in the process of setting up a website, but right now, my first name is Merrit, Merrit, and the last name is Hartblay, Hart, B as in boy, Lay. The name of the book is Lost Innocence, My Journey from Addiction to Recovery. I'm so excited about it because I think it carries a really good message that there is hope. It's now up on Amazon.com. So you go to Amazon.com through books, and then you can just search my name. And I'm posting every day on Instagram and Twitter. And if anybody wants to friend me on Facebook, feel free to do that. So I keep putting stuff out there each day. And I'm hoping to do more stuff. We're going to be doing an audio book next, which I'm really excited about. And I'm going to be narrating it because I think it's not good when you have somebody else narrate your book. And just trying to push more stuff. I'm actually hoping to, at some point in time, be able to put my own podcast together. People can reach me through Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, and also on LinkedIn. And I really thank you so much for giving me some time to chat with you today.
I appreciate you taking time out of your day and telling us about the book and the work that you're doing, and give us that message about trying to live a positive life and be happy and not to set expectations on ourselves and on other people, because that's just setting ourselves up for future resentments, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Merrit, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your experience, strength, and hope with us. If you'd like to get in contact with Merrit, all of his information will be in the show notes. Thanks again.
You've been listening to Recovery Survey. If you got anything out of today's episode, I'd ask you to please leave us a 5-star review and share this episode with a friend. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can find us at recoverysurvey.com. You can listen to all of our episodes on the website, as well as connect with us on social media, where you can get previews for upcoming episodes. Hey guys, I wanted to let you know about an exciting new partnership with Broken Chains Apparel. They're a custom online shirt retailer that designs cool shirts for people in recovery. They want you to be proud of your recovery and wear it boldly. They're offering our listeners a 20% discount. All you have to do is use the promo code RECOVERY at checkout. Go grab your shirts today at brokenchainsapparel.com and follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Broken Chains Apparel.